morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you so much for joining our call this morning. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. Our top three things this week, if you haven't heard already, the Senate reached a bipartisan agreement to end the federal shutdown, and they voted and passed it on late Sunday night, really early, sort of Monday morning. Now the package is going to go to the House. There's also an advocacy opportunity. We are asking you all to chip in and urge your members of Congress to pass the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act by including the Road to Housing Act in the National Defense Authorization bill that will be considered. And the deadline to do so is tomorrow. And there's also a latest 2025 Fair Housing Trends report that just released that we will have in our call notes for you all to review. Moving right into federal updates, as we all know by now, this has been the longest federal shutdown to date, but it may be coming to a close as early as at the end of this week, but there's no guarantee. Earlier this week, the Senate Republicans won the votes of 7 Democrats and 1 independent, which gave them the minimum of 60 votes that they needed to pass a continuing resolution alongside 3 fiscal year 2026 spending bills that cover funds for agriculture, military construction, veterans affairs, and other legislative branch programs. The vote is expected to go before the House tomorrow or Thursday, where some people are saying it's likely, but still not guaranteed to pass. So to be clear, we are still in a government shutdown and full SNAP benefits remain suspended, and those furloughed workers are continuing without pay. Just for some clarity, here is what the continuing resolution would do that the Senate voted on. It would fund federal programs and services through January 30th, 2026, so really just 2 months from now, and includes full year funding for some of the agencies that I mentioned above, right? Veterans Affairs, agricultural programs, and military construction are among those programs. It would provide back pay for federal workers, including those who were furloughed, and it would reverse the layoffs that the Trump administration implemented at the very start of the shutdown in October. States would be reimbursed for money spent to maintain SNAP and WIC programs during the shutdown, and then there would be full funding for SNAP through September of 2026. What the CR does not do, the continuing resolution, what it does not do is it does not extend Affordable Care Act tax credits that expire at the end of this calendar year. And without these ACA subsidies, North Carolinians who get insurance on the marketplace would be expected to pay an average of $670 more per year in premiums next year. It also does not prevent the current administration from rescinding previously committed funds. And so we want to make sure that we just lift up all of those things. The reason why we add in the piece about the Affordable Care Act tax credits is because, as many of you know, housing is health and health is housing. And so if the cost of healthcare goes up among many other consequences, that's even less money that people have to be able to pay for their housing. The advocacy opportunity that we mentioned at the beginning of the call, this is with our national partners at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. We're joining them and asking you to urge your members of Congress to pass the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act and including the Road to Housing Act in the National Defense Authorization Act, that's a lot of acts, by tomorrow, November 12th. The reason why is the Bipartisan Reforming Disaster Recovery Act, RDRA, will do a lot of great things that include permanently authorize HUD's Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. So this is the CDBG-DR program, and this provides flexible grants to help presidentially declared disaster areas rebuild housing and other infrastructure, and as well as make critical reforms to make sure that this process is more efficient and equitable when it comes to disaster recovery. Right now, each time there's a disaster, because CDBG-DR is not permanently authorized, a whole request has to be put in, and it often delays the process, like it is delayed currently. The RDRA was unanimously passed out of the Senate Banking Committee as part of the Road to Housing Act. You can see it in Senate Bill 2651. And it also subsequently passed the Senate as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. And this is the first time in 16 years that the committee has passed any substantial housing legislation. So there are currently a lot of discussions and negotiations happening around the text of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. And those, since those are happening right now, one of the conversations happening in negotiations are including the Road to Housing Act, which includes the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act components as well. So as negotiations are expected to continue, they will likely conclude sometime this Wednesday or Thursday. So we really ask that you all go ahead, take action, send that message, make that phone call, and tell your Congress member to support the Road to Housing Act, and that it must be included in the NDAA by tomorrow. Moving on to state updates, Governor Stein is calling the General Assembly back for a special session on fully funding Medicaid and reversing provider payment cuts next Monday, November 17th. Both the House and the Senate have passed separate plans to fund Medicaid, but have not really been able to reach an agreement about some of those funding details. And it's still pretty unclear if legislators will take any action when they meet on Monday. Both chambers have said that there will not be any more votes until January. And just for those keeping track, the last time that the governor of North Carolina called the General Assembly back for a special session was in the wake of Hurricane Florence in 2018. Leading up to that special session on Monday, there are some meetings happening. This Thursday at 9:30 a.m., the House Select Committee on Involuntary Commitment and Public Safety will be meeting at the General Assembly. And so we'll have the link to watch it live, but obviously it's a public meeting, so you're welcome to attend that as well. The Governor's Advisory Committee on Western North Carolina Recovery will be meeting this Friday from 10 to 12 p.m. And the different agenda items will continue to include recovery updates, as well as discussing the Western North Carolina Technical Assistance Partnership for local governments, some cash flow challenges and updates from local governments. And if you are interested, you can register to join the virtual meeting. There will not be an opportunity for public comment, but questions and feedback can be shared at wncrecovery@nc.gov. And we'll include, again, all of this in our call notes. The Joint Legislative Commission on Governmental Operations Subcommittee on Hurricane Response and Recovery will be meeting in Greenville, North Carolina at ECU on Thursday, November 20th at 10 a.m. So this is next week. And the link to watch that committee meeting will be in the call notes for you as well. On the Western North Carolina recovery front, bridges and roads repair programs are accepting applications. So the Western North Carolina residents that are part of Tropical Storm Helene disaster declared counties may apply for up to 50% of reimbursement of any documented private road and bridge repair costs. So there is an online reimbursement application form on the North Carolina Emergency Management website. And there's additional resources in the call notes. All applications for this program are due by February 28th, 2026. North Carolina Emergency Management is also now accepting applications for the second round of its volunteer organizations active in rebuilds disaster grant programs. Eligible applicants are volunteer organizations that are actively involved in actual and ongoing repair and reconstruction projects for homeowners affected by Helene in North Carolina. The initial funding for this program is anticipated to be around $16 million, but there is no maximum grant request limit, and funding will be allocated to in order to maximize the potential capacity that is needed. The deadline to apply is 5 p.m. on December 11th, 2025. So we'll include a link for more information about that program and to apply in the call notes for you. Moving on to other state and local headlines. If you all recall, last year, one of the first, for the first several months, we talked quite a bit about insurance rates. And so have to mention this again, that insurance is back in the headlines and something that we need to continue to keep an eye out for. So just a year after there was a settlement reached between state regulators and the representatives of the insurance industry on increase in policy rates, there has been now another request filed for specifically for the coverage of rental properties. That would actually go as high as 70% over 2 years, specifically on the eastern part of North Carolina, specifically around the Outer Banks. Statewide, though, the North Carolina Rate Bureau is seeking a statewide average total increase of about 68.3% in dwelling insurance rates by 2027. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on this, lifting it up early. Again, it's only been a year since the new rates went into effect. And so it will be interesting to see how, in addition to all of the other sort of layered complications happening right now for folks trying to afford where they live, how this fits in. Moving on to reports, events, and resources. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the call, a new report around the 2025 Fair Housing Trends report has been released by the National Fair Housing Alliance. And the report reveals a few different things. We'll let you read it for yourself, but we just wanted to lift up a few. It shows that discrimination remains both pervasive and persistent. There have been over 32,000 fair housing complaints that were filed in 2024, and more than half of those were on the basis of disability. And even as discrimination rises, federal support is being withdrawn. And so recent HUD firings during the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history and federal funding cuts have left a lot of local and regional organizations under-resourced, and several have been forced to close entirely, which just allows for this problem to continue to be pervasive. It also underscores that the fight for fair and affordable housing is far from over, and that the path forward is going to require collective strength and policy reform. So keeping an eye on this key component of the housing work that we do. Another thing to lift up, there are two pieces, one from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce highlighting the role of housing to having a key and thriving economy. And then from Novogradac, recently the Department of Housing and Urban Development released their fiscal year 2026 fair market rents, and they actually went into effect on October 1st, so over a month ago. For those that don't know, fair market rents, or FMRs, represent HUD's estimate of the 40th percentile rent paid by recent movers, and these FMRs are what are used to establish payment standards for Section 8 housing choice vouchers, as well as other HUD programs, and they have an impact on the low-income housing tax credit income limits in areas that have a high housing cost adjustment. So the weighted average change, so just average across the board, is 2.8%, but some areas likely saw much higher. In free webinars and events, just want to lift up a few. There is an Advocacy 101 training being hosted by the National Alliance to End Homelessness happening tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. There is a webinar titled Untangling Heirs Property, Practical Strategies for Housing Counselors, being hosted by the National Community Reinvestment Coalition on Thursday, November 13th from 2 to 3 p.m. The North Carolina Women's Affordable Housing Network is going to have a virtual session talking closing strong and opening clear on November 20th at noon. So this is next Thursday. So you can learn more and register using the link in our call notes. It is $10. And then last but not least, moving into events. Next Monday, Hope in North Carolina will be having their annual Inclusive Housing Summit on November 17th at the Friday Center in Chapel Hill. If you are there, make sure to say hi. I will be there as well. Also next week, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits is having their conference. And if any of you are interested in attending the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's Policy Forum in 2026, the registration is officially open. The Policy Forum next year will be taking place March 10th through the 13th in Washington, D.C., and it was absolutely amazing last year when I went, and there's an opportunity to not only learn, but connect with folks from across the country and engage with your Congress members and with fellow practitioners and advocates. So if you're interested in checking that out, use the link in the call notes. That is all we have for you today. As always, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if you want us to cover anything in particular or you want us to share information about an event or opportunity. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great rest of your week.